Morning, it's Dr. Tharb. I am, as usual, on my morning walk. I usually take a morning and an evening walk. I got up a bit late. The sun is out, so I'm trying to get this walk done before the sun comes out in its full force. But I figured I would jump in here again, discuss topics that help you reverse prediabetes and type 2 diabetes and to do it naturally. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who do not want to be on medications, who are struggling though to control blood sugars, to understand why their blood sugars are high. And so, I'm on a mission. I want to help everyone, understand that they really hold the cards when it comes to reversing prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. It's really your choice. It's really about taking the action, about having the right strategy. Many people lack strategy, and that is why it's hard to, get things done. Many people don't understand the science, and that's why it's hard to get the right strategy, the right routines down to get the blood sugars controlled. So that's why I come in here to drop some pearls that you can apply to your own life, to your own daily routine. So if you are watching this, I hope this inspires you to go ahead and take a walk. I hope this inspires you to at least implement that daily. Walking is a great tool. But one specific topic I wanted to talk about today is sugar. And it's obvious, right? Duh. I mean, a lot of the people I work with have actually taken the steps to cut sugar out of their diet, or so they think. And they're very frustrated when their numbers aren't responding. So I wanted to talk about, well, how much sugar should you be having as a pre diabetic or a type 2 diabetic? I wanted to talk about how can you spot where hidden sugars are. And if you apply this to your day to day, to your daily nutrition, you'll probably see a difference with your blood sugars. So, first, let's just talk about the statistics. Um, Many of us here in the United States, we have a very carb heavy, sugar heavy diet. And so, what we find is that um, people are consuming sugar at an alarming rate. The average woman should be having about 6 teaspoons of sugar a day, and the average man should have about 9 teaspoons. But the average diet in the United States has a whopping 23 teaspoons. So you can see that 23 teaspoons a day. Um, and then, in addition to that, we're not moving our bodies. We build up excess body fat, and bam, it's like the perfect storm for insulin resistance and eventually type 2 diabetes. So we are eating sugar at an alarming rate. And that has a lot to do with the how foods are made. Foods today are highly processed. Even the foods that are marketed as healthy are highly processed, has lots of added sugar in there, especially if it's marketed as low fat or low carb, then many times they make up with artificial sweeteners, or they make up with added sugar. And so that is why I always stress the importance of reading and understanding your nutrition labels so that you can spot where the hidden sugars are and you can avoid those foods. Now, if you're struggling with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, you would be shocked to know that you should only be having, if you really want to take steps to reverse, you really should only be having 5 teaspoons of sugar a day max. Five. Again, the average diet has 23 teaspoons. You should be aiming for five. And please keep in mind, we're talking about added sugar. We are not talking about natural sugars, because a question I always get is fruit. Fruit is actually the preferable source. You have fructose in fruit. It's the preferable source of sugar if you're going to have something sweet. So we're not talking about fruit at this point. We're just talking about added sugar. So you should be aiming for about 5 teaspoons. So if you want, you can get your salt container, or if you have a bottle of sugar in the house, just kind of go through, measure those out, pour them into a cup, and see exactly how much we're talking about. And that will help it become more real to you. To be honest, if you have type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes and you have one of those sugar bowls in your house, then I think that's the first thing that you should get rid of, because we can absolutely live without that sugar bowl. Okay, we can get natural sugars from our food, and it's perfectly sustainable, and you don't feel restricted. That's why what I teach the women that I work with is that you can live without, the sugar container, adding sugar and lots of starchy things, and still be eating well and feeling full and feeling well nourished and feeling great and having lots of energy. So you can take the time to just look at the amounts that I'm talking about: 23 teaspoons versus 6 and 9 teaspoons versus 5 teaspoons if you're a pre diabetic or a type 2 diabetic. So that is the recommended amount. Now, how do you figure out if if you're overdoing added sugar? And the first thing I recommend is to look at your labels. When you look at your labels, you want to look your nutrition labels on food. You want to look at how much added sugar there is. Added sugar is the amount of sugar that's actually put into that food. So, and if you want it to be within that, um, within that uh, the guidelines that I mentioned. So, if you're looking at grams, then as a type 2 diabetic, you're aiming for 15 grams a day, 15 grams a day. And so anything you're eating throughout the day should total around 15 grams of added sugar a day. So, for example, if you have made all these healthy changes, one of the mistakes that I see a lot is yogurt. I will see, people go for the flavored yogurt. They'll even go for the really good Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt is the best yogurt to have. It's high in protein. But the problem with the flavored yogurt is it has added sugar, and the average flavored yogurt has about 12 to 18 grams. So, in one sitting, you've obliterated your limit for the day. So, it's really important to look at those labels to figure out exactly how much sugar you're getting in. And um, I think you'll have some great insight just by doing that. You're going to be shocked. So I think over the next week or so, take some time to do that. Look at the added sugar labels. And if you are hitting over 15 grams consistently, it means that you are eating way more sugar than your body can manage. So I would take the steps of substituting. Okay, so if you're having flavored Greek yogurt, for example, and it has all that added sugar, then what you want to do is replace it with plain Greek yogurt, and you can add fruits. You can add fruits to give it that sweetening flavor. The fruit is natural, has lots of fiber in there, has lots of antioxidants and minerals. So adding fruit to plain Greek yogurt is a good alternative. So what I say is when you are paying attention to added sugar in foods, um, and you realize it's too much for you, then always think about what the alternative can be. And there are lots of alternatives out there. You just have to know what they are. You have to go looking for them. So um, that is one example. The other example are your flavored oatmeals. Morning, morning. Are your flavored oatmeals. So uh, that's where people go wrong again. So flavor has lots of added sugar. And again, one serving can have 18 grams of sugar. Remember, as a pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic, your budget is 15 grams of added sugar a day. So if you are eating oatmeal every morning and you're thinking this is healthy, but why am I still spiking my blood sugars? There is your answer. Okay. So the first thing you're going to replace it with, that oatmeal with, is steel cut oats. Again, lots of fiber in there. So the glycemic index is very low. It's not going to spike your blood sugar as high. And then you want to flavor it. Okay. If you want some sweetness to it, again, that's where adding your fruit comes in. So the other thing I point out are those morning protein smoothies. So if you've been keeping up on my lives, if you've been watching my lives consistently, you will see I stress protein. Have adequate protein intake daily. A lot of people do shakes in the morning and or smoothies and supposedly healthy. Again, what's healthy for the average person is not necessarily healthy for you with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. So you have to pay attention to what you're putting into the smoothie. So if you're going for a protein powder that is sweetened, that is your number one issue right there. So it's really important to pay attention to those labels of any ingredients in your shakes. The safest way to go is, again, going for your unsweetened protein powders and then adding fruit. And just don't go overboard with the fruit either, but adding low glycemic fruit. I always talk about berries being a safe bet when you're battling prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, and add only one berry. Make sure it's the sweeter, sweeter berries, because I know it's always a struggle. It can be a struggle finding sweet berries. Some of them are a little sour, but make sure you get the sweet berries, you add them there, and it gives it that light tinge of sweetness so you can still enjoy your protein shake. Um, but that is blood sugar friendly. So, one thing I would want you to do this week to see if it makes a difference is to look at added sugar and aim for 15 grams of sugar a day. So look at your labels, your nutrition labels. If the food you're eating does not have a nutrition label, you can find them online. You can find them. There's so many different ways that you can find the nutrition facts for different foods. So familiarize yourself with that. Now, other things that, other ways that hidden sugars get into your diet is, well, it's our tendency to minimize what we have. Okay, so if we are, if we have a small piece of candy, we say, oh, you know, this isn't a big deal. This piece of candy is not a big deal, it's such a small piece, it can't do anything. Well, I remember I had a client, she had some blood sugar spikes in the morning, and she told me she was tracking everything very well, and she was right. Seemed everything that she was eating was pretty good. She was doing pretty well. And then, I asked her about the very small things. Is there anything you're tasting? Is there anything you're snacking on? Because a lot of us tend um, to discount the snacks or the little bites or the tastes. As a mom, I know what it's like. You're preparing the kids' meals and you taste, or you're cooking and you taste along the way. And so I know what it's like to do that. And so, I dove a little bit deeper. And she's like, well, yes, there's a piece of ginger candy that I had, in the night. Every night I have this piece of ginger candy. And she wasn't checking the label on it because in her mind, a small piece of candy wouldn't count. It wasn't a big deal. And we talked about it. I advised her, look at that nutrition label, look at the added sugar. And the added sugar in that small piece of ginger candy was 8 grams of sugar. So that was half of her budget a day. And so when she stopped doing that ginger candy, we noticed an improvement in her blood sugars. So it's really those small things. And to be honest, that is why it is so important to have an accountability partner and someone who you can talk to, because things that you might not be catching on to slip through the cracks. And so it helps to have someone who can help you figure out where those small issues are happening. And ultimately, her A1C, over time of just reprogramming the way she thought about added sugar, her A1C dropped from 7.2 to 6 in less than 90 days. So it's really taking those subtle, paying attention to those very subtle things as well that make a difference with blood sugar. And if you do that consistently, you will notice a significant drop in your A1C. Now, this is just one perspective, of course. The other things you have to keep in mind is walking, which I'm doing right now. And I can tell you, I am in the grind with you. I understand what it's like to be insulin resistant. I am coming from that place as well. Everything that I'm talking about, I had to learn, even as a doctor. You know, um, as a doctor in traditional medicine, we don't really address these things with our patients. And then when the time came for me to address that on a personal level, when it came time for me to turn my health around, I learned these things and I realized that there's such a huge void in the discussions we're having with our physicians. The typical physician is not having discussions about detailed discussions about nutrition. They're not telling you numbers, what to look out for. They're not spending an hour long um, sit down with you to figure out where you could be going wrong in your day to day. So you feel like you're doing everything right, you're making changes and it's not working, but you have no one to talk to. So, I completely understand that, and that is why I do what I do. So I'm hoping that, this information will help you. Maybe now you can do an audit of what you've been eating, tally up that added sugar, and you would be shocked. It's really shocking for a lot of people when they go through that process of tallying up how much added sugar they're having daily. So it is a system, though. That's one way to get your blood sugars better. But reversal of prediabetes and type 2 diabetes is really all about getting the system right. And that's what we do in the Reverser Challenge. It's, you know, a way of tying all the pieces together so they work like a well oiled machine. And that is how we achieve reversal for the long term. And that's how you avoid being on medications. That's how you avoid the misery of fasting. That's how you avoid the misery of feeling starved. It's really sustainable. And so that way you feel well forever and ever. You're not on a temporary diet and it's not a phase, but it's real change. So in the Reverser Challenge, if you need that accountability, if you need someone to talk to, if you need someone who's going to help you find those little subtle areas that you could be going wrong in, then reach out to me. Um, that's why I'm here. The link is in the bio. And if you want an example of how you should be eating to minimize added sugar, then take a look at my sample meal plan. You can design a meal plan for yourself just based on that meal plan that I have there. It really shows you how you can minimize that added sugar and getting the good carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, to get your blood sugars down. So I suggest go ahead, grab the meal plan. The link is also in my bio. And, and if there's any topic you want me to cover, if there's any questions that you have, again, I know it's hard. You don't have anyone to talk to. Your doctor isn't necessarily sitting down with you to break things down or to address any questions you have. So please feel free to drop some comments. I got some really great questions on my prior live, and I'm going to respond to those shortly. I got some awesome questions, and I'll actually be covering those topics in upcoming lives. But please go ahead, drop your questions, because whatever question you put in the comments will help somebody else. Because if you have that question, many other people have that question. If you have that struggle, many other people have that struggle. So, with that, I am going to finish up my walk, and I hope that you will be inspired to take a walk today. And again, spend this week just figuring out exactly how much added sugar you're getting in your diet. You're probably going to be surprised.